Hey you guys, this is tiredg0th and you are behind the scenes with me. Um so where do I begin? Right? Where do I begin? Between some things that I'm doing or like tangible production things like getting my book together, adding chapters to it. Sorry, my nose is itching. Editing, doing everything that needs to be done to finalize the book, the second book in the series, so I can finally start printing it. And some other I'm so sorry for yawning. Some other stuff, right? Just like daily tasks, getting things, situated properly, avoiding pitfalls that other people set up for me, so my trust doesn't end up getting taken advantage of. This is another thing that's going on. Intuiting the real feelings of people all the while this is happening. I don't know if any of you actually know what it feels like to be an empath, but it's not always something that feels like a superpower. Like you can literally, in some cases, see through to the hearts of people. And I feel like the only real issue with this is that like a lot of people don't have hearts anymore. Or at least they forgot them somewhere. They just, in some matter of convenience, they were like, well, I don't need this anymore. How's this going to serve me in the world that I'm being presented? This is what I'm seeing. And it's like actively trying to not be like that around people who are really like that is crazy. It's so crazy to me. It's probably crazy to a lot of people, which is why they felt it was easier to be heartless. But being heartless only carries you so far down the road. You might need to hear this. You might need to know this, but sometimes throwing away your ability to be compassionate and empathetic is like the worst thing you can do. And other times it's the best thing you can do. And measuring those two situations against one another is like one of the hardest things that you can ever do in your life. I say this because there is a code of honor that we all follow, whether or not we realize it. It's like, it's not as medieval as the original code, which was like, um, whoever appeals to the law over man is either a fool or a coward. Whoever cannot take care of themselves without that law is both. For a wounded man shall say to his assailant, if I live, I will unalive you. If I die, you are forgiven. Right? I paraphrased a bit. Such is the rule of honor. When it comes to honor these days, it is more so this I've found in my personal experience. Take it or leave it. Honor is circumstantial. If you are dealing with dishonest people, people who don't value honor, you are already playing on a crooked game table. The odds are already bet against your ability to succeed with honor. And some of the best ways to handle that are to avoid those people or those mentalities that support people this way completely, entirely. But of course, in business and in any social situation, it's nearly impossible unless there are good communities and foundations that facilitate the avoidance of this type of ethic in the first place that supports crooked people who do this kind of stuff, right? But you also have your ability to just plow forward and destroy them. But how do you destroy an idea? confirmation with people screaming in the background. Weird. How do you destroy an idea? How do you destroy an ethic, a concept? Because like you can only rely on law so far down the road without somehow inviting corruption through absolutism. Or alternatively, you can only be so free without law, without justice, without due process and judgment, right? How do you strike a balance? I guess what I'm trying to get at here is if you are dealing with people who are inherently corrupt because they have no semblance, they have no connection to what brings them into a human conception of themselves, how they manifest themselves, how they present themselves to you. If they're out of touch with their inherent humanity and it's all a mask, you're not dealing with a human, you're dealing with a husk. You're dealing with a person who has forfeited their personability, their humanity, quite literally. And when you are dealing with people who have forfeited their humanity, you are dealing with people who are set out to help you lose, ultimately. Now, a person who is heart-centered doesn't only think about the gains that they're meant to have. They don't only think about the wins. They think about shared wins. They think about community. They think about shared goals, ideas, not for the sake of sharing to thieve, to steal, to harvest off of it at the end of the day for themselves, but to create a genuine sense of mutually assured compassion, not destruction. I say this because people have forgotten the purpose of kindness. Now, some people are just kind because it's like, why wouldn't you be kind? But the purpose of kindness actually serves as a reminder to people who have lost their sense of kindness and compassion, which is easy to do. It's all actually too easy to do. It's all too easy. It is one of the simplest, swiftest, most dangerous things you can do to yourself, to forget your own compassion in what it is that you're doing, because it is such a brief action that destroys anything else you could build from there. And I'm not saying, you can mess it up once for your whole life, but you can do that if you sell your soul or decide, I don't need to be a person who is compassionate. I don't need to be a person who is considerate of the real matters at hand. I'm not gonna, I don't want to go down a path where everyone is like, oh, we have to empathize with every single thing in front of us. No. Because that's how you get distracted from true compassion. And I'm going to say it this way, so nobody can mince my words for me. Okay? Be compassionate to people who are going through things, but do not take on their problems as your new problem. If it is something that they themselves are struggling with solely within their reality, that could not be fixed by anyone but themselves. Does that make sense? If it could not be fixed by anyone but themselves, that is solely their work to do. If a person is struggling with a sense of identity that they have for themselves, let them work it out. If they're asking for help in the matter, let them ask for help. But if they're imprinting their confused identity onto you, let them figure it out. But if someone, contrarily, comes to you and says, I'm doing everything that I can myself, I'm taking all the accountability that I can to fix this problem, but it's still not enough, can I ask you for help? Help that person. The difference between these two things here is accountability. And I'm going to talk about something that's really ugly as a topic, okay? Having accountability for your own self-concept and self-awareness is not just about how much money you make. It's not just about how you control your emotional output if you're truly upset. It is not about the more tangible things. It is not about solely presentation. It is about what is underlying to that presentation. I'll give you an example. If you wake up in your day and you, as whatever sex, gender, I don't know how this even factors in, anybody could be prone to this, right? Wherever you're going in your day, you wake up one day and you just feel scared as all hell and you don't know what to do about it. That's okay. Normal to feel that way. Normal to have such a crushing and acute sense of self-awareness about your decisions, about your life. That's totally fine, totally normal. But it's what you do from there, that realization, that ends up shaping how people are probably going to grow to tolerate you from there. I'll give you the two concepts that I'm using to compare situations where a person has a handle on their fear, in this case, and a person who does not have a handle on their fear in the second case. A person who wakes up scared, both people, by the way, are waking up exactly the same way. They both wake up completely terrified of what they have come to analyze about themselves, right? The first person, who I feel has a good handle on that, takes that fear, addresses the fact that they are afraid, and tries to go inward in meditation without asking anybody else to mitigate their fear for them. They try to analyze it first, right? And this could take years. They may not ever talk about what's actually making them afraid unless it's like, allusions to things, just to gain, a perspective that's different from theirs. Whether or not they adopt the perspective is also completely up to them. It's called self-control, self-management, right? That's pretty great. I consider that to be healthy. A lot of other people might too, right? But person two here, who woke up the exact same way, with a slightly warped sense of responsibility to themselves here, might actually wake up so afraid that they decide that they want to make everybody else feel afraid just like them about their reactions to other people not being as afraid as them. Does that sound familiar to you? Now, I get, because, I prefer to err on the side of stoicism, right? I understand that there's no such thing as, like, true happiness alone or with people. We can strive for that. Contentment without burden is ideal. But stoicism is about managing burdens. It's about carrying one's burdens with another person. But how do you strike a balance where your stoicism doesn't crush your own identity by enforcing someone else's, right? The way is to assure, in my opinion, that everyone is actually doing their work. I'm saying this here, I'm addressing this as succinctly and as clearly as possible because I feel like as an empath and as someone who handles a lot and as someone who can tolerate a lot, I'm speaking on behalf of a lot of people who do this, who are like this, who have that management ability, and maybe, like a vent here and there, like I am right now. This to me is normal, right? I'm not expecting you to feel any type of way about it either. This is more just me like updating anyone who's listening. But when you are in a position to handle things yourself, and you're being criticized for not empathizing with people who can't handle things internally themselves, I'm going to be the one to tell you that's not your work to be done. Like, people love, like, I don't, but people love comparing everything to high school, right? Here's one. Are you going to do someone else's homework every time they hand you their paper just because they have a broken leg? Or even something more permanent because maybe they, like, you know, lost an eye and don't have, the ability to see the chalkboard where they're sitting when they can just get up and move closer to the board, right? Like, I'm just saying, like, there are a number of things that could be happening to anybody at any single time, and the real empathy there is like acknowledging that we're all walking wounded and we're all doing our best to heal and healing each other along the way. So it's like the selfishness that people have about protecting the things that they're clinging on to in the first place, just so they feel like they're hanging on, it's like, that's not real work being done. So I know this is a difficult thing, it's a difficult topic, but like, when you see this about yourself as a person who is able to run your own business or provide your own insight, create your own content, manifest your own works, do what it is that you really care about doing, you start to see those people who are that selfish and trying to hold everybody else up on the line because of their specific work to do that is solely their crisis. You kind of start to see, like, why people feel uncomfortable talking about it, because the backlash for discussing the fact that someone isn't handling their responsibilities proves to be more threatening than it is intuitive about their actual position. If people hear stuff like that, they get triggered and they're like, how dare you say this? How could you have an opinion? Because I have an opinion. Because opinions are important, they're valid. And all people's opinions are valid because they're opinions. But when you try to make your opinion someone else's opinion, when you try to force someone to adopt how you are and then hurt them or do your best to, like, leave them, in a worse position for not agreeing with you, that's discrimination. That's censorship. That's all the stuff that people hate, that people specifically in this category of a lack of responsibility for themselves love to hide behind. I almost felt like I wasn't allowed to sleep until I said that out loud. I conceptualized it. I gave it a comparison. I'm not telling you who to be. I'm not telling you what to feel. I'm not telling you anything about yourself, except that if you're doing work, do the work for yourself and stop expecting people to help you with it. Because the harsh reality of life is that at the end of the day, if it weren't for compassion, no one would help you. We are all raised by the same cold mastery of Earth. And some of us are all too familiar with it. For some of us, it's actually the root of why we struggle with our identities, because we are too familiar with it, almost as if there's no reprieve from it. But one of the best ways to center yourself is to remind yourself that your best friend is you, that you are the sole person who decides what matters to you. And if it doesn't matter to someone else, what about you withers away? What about you dies? Is it your ego? Is it your actual self? Is it your illusion? Is it your delusion? Is it your image? What is it? What is it that you're afraid of parting with by doing your own work? Because what that sounds like to me, and what it always has sounded like to me whenever I've witnessed it, is that you are afraid of losing the whimsy of your childhood, where things would be eternally granted to you with playfulness, with jovial responses, with pride in your work, with assertion that comes from others, self-gratification through others' praise. You're afraid to part with people clapping for you over something you built for yourself when you should be clapping for you? I just want to give you a reminder that some of us, even with our hands full, are looking to you and saying, hey, good job. But if our hands are full, we're not going to be able to clap for you because we're doing the work. Okay? It's not a hatred thing. It's a duty thing. It's responsibility to ourselves. But of course, it's encouraged to be generous. But remember, with respect to inevitabilities, even generosity can rob you yourself blind by giving to the wrong person, the wrong situations, the wrong people. So just be careful, be mindful, and stay grateful if you already were. Love you guys.